Alright, this video is all about how to tune a violin. Before I go through that though, I'm just going to play all the open strings in case you just want to hear the pitches so that you can match to those as you're working with your violin. I'm just going to play them from low to high and I'll do a couple notes each. So those are the open strings on the violin, the lowest to highest. It's G, D, A, and E. And now I'll talk a little bit about how to actually tune a violin, but in case you just want to hear those pitches and not watch the rest of this, then there you go. To tune this though, there's actually two different mechanisms on a violin that you can use to tune. The tailpiece down here has fine tuners on it. Mine only has one, but most student models will have all four. Or I've seen violins with just two, one on E and one on A. So these down here, you turn them and they will tune the strings. Those do small adjustments, that's why they're called fine tuners. Up here at the top we have the pegs, and the pegs do really major adjustments on the strings. And we have on the left side of the violin G, D, and then on the other side we have A and then E. If you're not sure and you're going to go move a peg and you're like, wait a minute, I want to tune G string, but you don't remember which peg it is, just take the string, you can follow it up, look inside the peg box, and you'll see which peg it's wrapped around. So you can always follow it up with your eye and then look and see which peg you need to turn. First thing you'll need is a tuner. There's lots of different tuners you can get. I actually just like the one that I have on my phone. It's called Tuner Lite, and when you open it up it looks like this. Lite is spelled L-I-T-E. And I really like this one. You'll push this button so that once you start to play, you can see that it's gonna have the different pitches, like it's actually picking up my voice right now. And then when you play, it's telling me that this is a G string. I like this app specifically though because it has a number next to the letter, and that's actually really helpful. This G that we're playing is G3. If your violin is so out of tune and you're like, well, I have it as a G, but that number is incorrect, well, you're on the wrong G. So actually that can be a good reference point to know where you're at. So G is G3, A is, well, let's see if it'll do it, D is D4, A is A4, and E is E5. So it's actually really helpful to see that number. So this is the tuner I use. So you just want to have that on hand so you can watch. There's this little needle that just goes back and forth and you just want it to be right in the middle. I tune to 440 Hertz, and then you want the little green button in the middle just to be on green, not on red, and then you'll be in tune. So have that so where somewhere you can see it. Now, tuning with the fine tuners is pretty much no big deal. It's really easy, it's pretty intuitive, and it's pretty hard to break a string with the fine tuners. Versus the pegs, it's a little more scary to have to move them around, so that's what I want to focus on. And my violin is in tune currently, so I'm just going to take, I'll do D string, and I'm just going to lower it so I can show you what I'd have to do to tune it. What I want you to listen for is as I loosen it, I want you to hear a little, listen, you're going to hear a little click. And so the pegs are under quite a bit of tension within that peg box. And so before I ever tighten a peg, I always actually go back towards me first. I've actually seen a peg box split before because it was under so much pressure, having like turned it forward before turning it back. So I always turn mine back and kind of gauge like where am I with that. Now I'm out of tune, that's flat, not a very nice note. So what you want to do, you can sit down, you can stand, it doesn't matter, but you want to have one hand on the violin. I think it's most comfortable and secure when I have the violin into my stomach. One of my hands, if I'm tuning on this side, this is my orientation, so my right hand is cupping the violin and my thumb is free to pluck the string. Now this is the most important part. You need to know where your pitch is at all times. If you stop playing this as you turn, You have no idea if it's going super high, super low, so you want to make sure you're constantly plucking that string while you're turning the peg. If you always know where your pitch is at, you're not going to break a string. If you're not sure where your pitch is at, game over, you're probably going to break a string. So I'm going to take this hand, I have it positioned on purpose this way so that I can pluck that string as I turn the peg. So this is the most important part. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, plucking while I turn this. Glancing at my tuner here. And we're right there. Now, some people have a really hard time with the pegs staying inside the peg box. Very often, especially if there's not a lot of tension, you're having to do a bunch of tuning and actually tune it really far and put a lot of tension on those strings. The peg will slip and it'll just roll back and it won't stay into the peg box. If that happens, you need to push the peg into the peg box, but you should do it while you're turning it. So as you would turn it as tuning, you're pushing it into the peg box as you turn. So that, sometimes it's surprising how much effort or weight or pressure you need to actually get that peg back in there, but don't be afraid, just nice firm pushing it back into the peg box as you turn it. And then that's also why I loosen it first before I turn forward, because all of that tension in there is just a lot for that peg box, and so it's taking that pressure off before I put more on. So that's pretty much it. One thing with tuning is, yes, you can pluck it, and if I was to do, let's say, A string, E string, I would just flip-flop hands. Now I'm doing the same exact thing, and sometimes it's more comfortable sitting down. You just have to figure out your setup, but however you can play the string while you turn the peg. Now, the tuner will pick up your pitches when you pluck them really well, but it doesn't actually do it perfectly until you add the bow. So I will, and this is for new students, if you can't make an awesome sound right away, or you're not using the bow even in the beginning, then you can wait on this, just get the strings as close as possible. But if you're playing and you're working on a good tone, you can actually play the string here. And let's say it's really close, you can take your hand, it's a little awkward at first, you're going to go underneath the bow, and you're going to go up to that tail piece with the fine tuner, and you can actually turn the fine tuner as you play the string with the bow. And it's more accurate for your tuner. Your tuner will pick up a more accurate reading, and you can actually really dial in that tuning. If you haven't done the bow yet, or just not quite there with that, it's just important that you have tension on the strings. The bridge, this piece right here, the bridge, and then there's a sound post on the inside. It's a little post that sticks up. If you look through one of the F holes or sound holes, you can see it. Those two pieces, if not under tension, they will fall, and that is a big issue. More things will happen when those two fall. So if they do fall, by the way, if this falls ever, you want to untension the strings so the strings are not putting that pressure down onto the fingerboard. The sound post, there's still a likelihood that it could fall if that tension's off, but you definitely want to get the tension off from pushing down on the fingerboard. But this needs to be under tension, so it's so important that we get the whole instrument tuned. Even if you're just learning on 2 strings at once, the whole thing needs to be tuned so that this is staying in alignment and the sound post is staying in alignment. All right, I hope that helps. You can always comment or let me know if you have questions.